It's the FA Cup weekend with 16 matches across 5 days. Squad rotation is the norm usually, but we've got an unchanged lineup of our betting experts as we look to keep that form going. We've got 6 singles and a pod treble with tips from the FA Cup, Championship, Serie A and Liga. All that and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Football Betting Pod Powered by Betting Expert. I'm your host, Daniel Jenkins, joined as ever by Betting Expert's football editor, Sam Ingram. How are you doing, man?
Hello, Dan. Good morning. Yeah, very good. How are you?
Great. I'm great. We'll bring in the rest of the people and just get straight to it because we've been, all this small talk, mate, it's just dragging out the episodes. I think people just want to get on with the bets. Nobody said it in the comments, but I'm getting that feeling. Just shut up and get on with it. So let's do that. Joining us again today, Daniele. How are we doing?
Hello, all good, thank you.
Good. Mark Stinchcombe, back again, back in form.
Yeah, I would say good, but no, I'm still reeling from that last-minute Angelino strike for Roma.
Very disappointed. Big weekend as well. Just touching it very, very quickly before we get on with the bets, but January transfer window slammed shut, as we always do. Fair few moves, quite a busy window. A bit busier than some of the last few years. Looking at how it's going to affect some of the betting, obviously teams like Manchester City bringing in a lot of players. Anybody want to comment on how the January transfer window is going to be affecting some outrights, or whether they're going to be looking at some teams slightly differently in the next couple of months?
Well, I think in the Premier League, probably the big winners are Aston Villa. Some smart moves. You sign a 2 times Champions League winner in Marco Asensio, Donny Malen, who played in the Champions League final last season, and of course Marcus Rashford, although his numbers are not great this season, but he's certainly fresh blood. And having shipped away John Duran, who had a fringe role in the team, it looks like a good business for them, considering also they signed Alex Disasi. Aston Villa only 3 clean sheets so far in the league. And if we look at Betsy and the projected points finish, they're projected to finish 7th, below Nottingham Forest, below Bournemouth, but in a top 6 market at the moment on Bet365, which you can get them at odds of 5. I think probably they represent the biggest value following the January transfer window. Same cannot be said for Manchester City. I think they look far too short for a top 2 finish, despite spending over 100 millions. Perhaps same cannot be said for Manchester United and Arsenal. Still very, very short, even for a top half finish, in my opinion, for Manchester United.
Yeah, very, very good window for Villa, as you said, and a few teams got ups and downs based on the transfer business. Sam, I do want to bring you in here. Maxim Kalovyarov, Plymouth's latest acquisition. I hear he had a pretty good debut.
That's close enough. Yeah, he's got Maxi on the back of his shirt, so maybe we'll just stick with that.
Yeah, we'll stick with that.
He came in, and so did Katic. He used to play for Rangers. They were stuck in at centre half next to each other for the first game. 2 Eastern European, 6'3", 6'4", 2 massive lumps. Just shoved them at the back, and Argo were pretty good defensively, pretty solid, probably the most solid I've seen them all season. So if that's a sign of things to come, then maybe there won't be too many 4-5-0 scorelines on the horizon. Fingers crossed.
Certainly one to look out for. Swansea City will be swapping places with Plymouth in the relegation zone before long. We'll
maybe.
See,
they're a big enough price to do so as well, aren't they? Considering the 4-man losing Matt Grimes.
Yeah, backed them last week.
What price?
I got them, I think it was 40 to 1 I got them at. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I think they'll give you a run for your money at that price. I really do.
Yeah. Not great.
You can't really say they're too good to go down. But this season, especially, got Luton down there. They were mixing in the Premier League last year. What looked like they had some Premier League quality players just fallen right off. So if they're down there struggling, I think they're second from bottom at the minute. So if they're down there, then Swansea can definitely get dragged into it. I think they will be okay in the end, but 40 to 1. Big old price.
Yeah, it's coming a fair bit. Mark, any movers and shakers in the transfer window that's caught your eye? Any teams you're going to be looking out for in the first couple of months after the window? Maybe the prices haven't quite adjusted to the transfers.
I thought for me, what was most interesting was United's move for Patrick Dorgu from Lecce. as their solution for left wing back, because from my knowledge, he's more of a winger. He's played 50% of games for Lecce this season on the wing. So I'm wondering if he's played recently for Lecce, he's played at fullback. But I'm wondering if, he's going to be shoehorned a little bit into this wing back position. And I think it means there's more question marks when we look at the fact that United lined up with Kobe Mainu as a striker rather than Højlund or Zirkzee, who were both on the bench, and United were 1.8 against Crystal Palace. Just think can just keep opposing United every game pretty much. They're 1.3 at home to Leicester this weekend. I don't think anyone's out there backing United at 1.3 to beat Leicester, especially if you're going to line up without a recognised striker. Just think there's more problems there. Martinez now out for the season, who was actually seemingly fitting in well in that back three in terms of going forward, scoring a couple of goals away from home. So, yeah, I think United battling to finish outside of the bottom half. Just think you can just keep opposing them. They're obviously still in Europe as well. So I would definitely look to, just oppose them every week at these prices. Like, I can't see anyone sane going near them at odds on quotes.
Yeah. I think I'll take that advice. They're a bit of a mess.
Dan, what's your thoughts in regards to Arsenal? So obviously, you probably did need to bring someone in up top. Were you expecting a striker coming in, or were you resigned to laughing?
On deadline day, no, but before the window, yes. I think they needed a striker, but they probably needed one for the start of the month more so than the end of the month. They had so many fixtures towards the start of January, playing every 3 days. That was when they needed somebody in. It's a familiar story. We've seen it quite a few times for Arsenal in the last few years. They needed to sign somebody in January and then they couldn't, and wait until the summer, that sort of thing that gets rolled over. I understand it's quite complicated with these very, very expensive big money transfers, that if you make one bad move in January, you can really set a club back for several years. If they panic and splash the money on a player that isn't quite right, then you're stuck paying them for 5 years, aren't you? For the remainder of their contract, you can't ship them out. So I do appreciate that side of it as well.
I think it'll be a case of a big signing coming in the summer.
Yeah, probably.
Who would you like?
Isak.
Big money.
Yeah.
Pod favourite, no?
Yeah. Yeah, pod favourite. Listener favourite as well. Too, want to bring the listeners in. We've had some really good tips from our listeners in the past couple of weeks, Sam, haven't we? I know you've been keeping an eye on the comments. Yeah. Not a strong one.
Not this week.
Not a strong one, guys.
Don't think we had a winner this week.
No.
So.
Yeah. Shouts out a couple. Curtis, Everton versus Leicester draw. Calvert-Lewin injured is my best bet. Didn't quite pan out. Paul Claffey, Wolves versus Derby. Wolves versus Villa Derby, both teams 20 plus booking points. Don't think that quite came in, did it? Or I think that was the only one that came in, I think. And then the long shot was City to beat Arsenal, Sunderland to beat Middlesbrough, Wolves to beat Villa. City versus Arsenal, Sunderland versus Borough, Wolves versus Villa, over 2 cards for each team. And over 1 card second half at 50-1. Didn't quite get the cards over the line in the Arsenal game, did we?
The Wolves Villa 20 plus booking points each did come in, so fair play to Paul. We'll take that back, but that was our only winner this week. So
that was the only winner this week.
Expecting better next week.
Keep them coming, guys. We win together, we lose together. And on that note, Sam, I don't know what you're going to give us this week, but what's your first pick?
I'm very FA Cup focused this week, or 3 picks coming in the FA Cup. And the first one, this will actually be played on Tuesday night, I think. This will be Exeter v Nottingham Forest. I'm going for Nottingham Forest win first half and to win the match, and that's at 1.83. So looking at Exeter specifically, they've hit a bit of a sticky patch of form. The mood at the club, largely directed at the manager, Gary Caldwell, is worsening by the match. They've conceded 13 goals in their last 3 league games, 3 to Blackpool, 6 to Leyton Orient, both at home, and then 4 to Stevenage on the weekend. So it's really not very good there right now, and they're leaking goals early. 9 of those 13 goals conceded in the last 3 games have come before the half-time whistle. So that's why I've ventured towards Forest to win first half and the win. I think the win's around 1.30, so obviously it needs something extra in there as a bet builder. No team in League One has been losing at halftime and lost at full time more often than Exeter City at home this season. So that's happened in 5 of 15 matches now. And it's happened in 5 of 14 away games too. So this selection has landed in Exeter City games in about 30% of matches at League One level. So with Nottingham Forest coming to town, a team that's just dismantled Brighton to the tune of 7-0, which Stinch had over 2.5 goals. I think that was a bit safe if we're looking at that in hindsight. So this is a cup tie that feels a bit concerning maybe for the League One side. This is a squad that is underperforming at present, and against Stevenage there were numerous individual errors. That's usually not a coincidence. That's a team lacking in confidence, and when you're lacking in confidence, the last thing you want is Nottingham Forest coming to town on the back of a 7-0 drubbing over Brighton, and they'll probably rotate Forest, probably rotate the 11 we see on the pitch, but that 11 should be stacked with quality. In the last round, in the third round, we saw a front three of Silva, Awoniyi and Souza. And that's a worrying thought if you're an Exeter City fan. Not so much if you support Plymouth Argyle. But yeah, I've landed on Forest, win first half, and win the game, 1.83.
Yeah, another FA Cup tie for Forest against the struggling team from the lower leagues. Similar sort of story in the third round, wasn't it, with the game against Luton Town. But this one, Sam, I'm glad you brought up the squad rotation, because Forest did rotate in the previous round, and they've since James Ward-Prowse played that day. He's since left. The only thing that's sort of holding me back from this bet is that first half win. Are you worried with the squad rotation, with these new players coming in, maybe it takes a little bit of time for these for the team to sort of string together, look a bit composed, and sort of get off the bat early in the match?
I suppose that's the concern, yeah. But this was obviously Forest are a great team, and the golfing class it's ridiculously big. But this was more so a bet against Exeter City and how bad they've been in the last few games, how bad they've been recently. And this is scheduled on Tuesday night. So Nuno Espirito Santos decided to take the Forest squad for warm weather training in Dubai, considering how long the time frame was between both matches. So they're in Dubai at the minute, and the plan, you would imagine, to build on squad harmony, fitness, ahead of the final push in the Premier League. But that might not mean anything to some, but I think personally this squad will go out there, have a good time, return feeling energised, ready to go. And the plan is to hit the ground running in the Premier League, but they have the small matter of a FA Cup first. And you would imagine that Nuno will go strong here to build on that good feeling in Dubai and then head straight into Fulham, 4 or 5 days later. I think post-Dubai, post that 7-0 win against Brighton, I think that he's just going to want to keep building momentum. And to be honest, like Forest's rotated squad, they've got more than enough.
Yeah, nothing about Exeter's recent form suggests that they'll be able to get past Nottingham Forest. They're really struggling lately, and Forest got so much strength and depth, haven't they? Really, it's not like they have it's like they have a small squad. They've got so many options coming off the bench and able to step in here. And that warm weather training midway through the season that you touch upon, Sam, that's really, really important. We've seen some teams benefit from that in the past couple of seasons. So, looks good. Sam's first bet, Forest to win the first half and Forest to win when they take on Exeter in the FA Cup. That's a 1.89. Mark, over to you. Not looking at the FA Cup, and instead looking at a match in La Liga with Athletic Bilbao versus Girona.
Yeah, I'm not a big FA Cup bettor, Dan. You can weigh... for me anyway, you can weigh like everything up. There could be a team that puts out their first choice 11, but they just don't play as if they're motivated at all. So for me, motivation is sometimes almost impossible to quantify. So I'm much more comfortable betting on leagues where, it's likely that a team will play out how they have done for the majority of the season, essentially. So yeah, I've picked out a couple of games this weekend where I think the goal line is too low. So I'm going to be having 2 bets on the over 2.25 line. So the first one is Athletic Bilbao against Girona in La Liga. Bilbao are 1.65 to win the game, which maybe could be argued as a touch short. Bilbao are 4th in La Liga, Girona 7th, so it's a top-end clash. Bilbao are having an absolutely excellent season. They're only 8 points off first. They've only lost 3 in the league all season. And we spoke about Girona a few weeks ago, but I won't spend too much on them. But yeah, they're also having a great season when you consider they lost so many big players in the summer. And yeah, so I don't really see any reason why we've got a low goal line here of 2.25. When you look at both sides' record of late, there's been over 2.5 goals in 8 of Girona's last 9 games. And that's in La Liga, and in Bilbao, 5 of their last 6 across all competitions. Yeah, we're talking about a goal line here of 2.25, which, as we sort of know, for ones that aren't aware, if there's 3 or more goals in the match, your bet wins completely. If there's 2 or more goals, so if there's only 2 goals in the game, you'll get half your stake back. So the only way the bet loses is if there's 0 or 1 goals in the game. When you look at both sides' respective records, they're very positive. 77% of Bilbao games have seen at least 2 goals. 77% of Girona's games have at least seen 2 goals. And you look at the head-to-head, it was 2-1 back at the beginning of the season, the reverse fixture in Girona. And since Girona have been promoted back to La Liga in 2022, all 5 have seen at least 2 goals, and 4 of those 5 have seen 3 or more goals. So I guess the question is, why is the line as low as it is, and why the price ultimately? I think probably because we can say quite comfortably for a few seasons now, La Liga has been an under 2.5 league essentially. This season, the average goals is 2.6. So if you're looking in terms of over-under price for 2.5, unders would be fave. If you look at the 2.25 line, you're looking at a blanket price of sort of around about 1.83 on overs. But we're getting 1.89 here on over 2.25. You know, there's evidence this actually could be a 2.5 game. So that's why I'm really comfortable. And I think it's just a great line to back, to be honest, because, you know, generally football matches are played out in, unless there's, you know, specific circumstances, they are played out in a manner which should be both teams will attack at periods in the game to try and ultimately win the match, which should lead to chances and ultimately goals. And yeah, I think it's just like quite a risk-averse approach taking this line because, as I say, only 0 or 1 will see your bet fully lose. And considering if you look at both teams' combined games this season, that would only had happened 23% of times. I think there's just a lot here in our favour. You look at expected goals, Girona actually bang on their actuals, so the data is sort of completely relevant. Whereas actually Athletic Bilbao games could have seen an additional 5 goals. So maybe that gives a reason why they're looking perhaps a bit short when you consider 4th v 7th and they're only 1.65. So yeah, over 2.25 at 1.89.
Yeah, it does stand out. It is quite surprising that the goal line is so low. I mean, betting projections put the projected goal total at 2.33, so on the lower side, but still carrying value with the over 2.25. But looking into the stats, looking into the data, both of these sides' last 8 matches in La Liga have averaged 2.88 total goals. So definitely on the overs. Both teams' scores landed in 75%, or 6 of Sevilla's last 8 in the league. Looking at the reverse fixture, 2-1 win for Girona when they play when they played at home, and I think in the last 6 matches between the two sides, both teams have scored in each of them. So certainly looked pretty good, Mark. I think my only question is, why do you think the goal line is so low? Is that based on underlying data or what?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, La Liga by rule is an unders league, so the line is sort of by default at the 2.25 line. And then I guess with Bilbao being at 1.65, basically the market is saying that it's going to be a low scoring Bilbao victory. But I think with Girona, what we know is there's so much volatility because there was such a huge turnover of players in the summer. So still, maybe even after 20 plus games, you're not necessarily seeing the perhaps true potential of their team. And I guess, I'd say expected goals are bang on. So maybe there's something more scientific that the perhaps syndicates or Asian gamblers are looking at that suggests that either Girona or Bilbao shouldn't be scoring as many as perhaps they have been essentially. But as I say, is there anyone out there backing under 2.25? that would always be my sort of flip side to it. Like if you're out there and you're going, yeah, I'll fancy under 2.25, then fair enough, go and take it. But again, I can't imagine that's going to be a sort of a positive watch. Even if you get 2 goals, you're still only going to get half your bet wins. So is there anyone going out there, unless it's Burnley playing, is anyone out there backing that sort of line? I'm not sure.
Yeah, as we often do, the best way to look at these Asian goal lines is, would you be backing the reverse, just to sort of test how you feel about a bet. And with this one, no, even 2.5, I'd still be quite tempted to go overs with it. I think the only sort of bit of team news that could sort of work against us, Nico Williams, big player for Athletic Bilbao, has been injured for a while, but could be back for this game as well. So certainly goes in our favour. I know he's big goal threat for them. But Mark's first bet is over 2.25 goals in Athletic Bilbao versus Girona. That's a 1.89 with 1 full unit on that. Daniele, over to you, and you're looking back to the FA Cup for your first pick.
Yeah, FA Cup 4th round, maybe the territory for the fringe players, for the unlikely goal scorers, where certainly that was the case in the 3rd round, where players like Rodrigo Muniz, who so far played only 31% of Fulham Premier League minutes, Federico Chiesa, as well as Rodrigo Gomez, Alexander Dance, Daniel Jebison, Nkunku, Tosin Adebayo, they all scored in the 3rd round of the FA Cup. So maybe there is chance for those fringe players to score again, because there are going to be changes. Even Jack Grealish broke his year-long goal drought in the 3rd round of the FA Cup, as we rightly tipped back then. So I'm looking here at the biggest mismatch in this 4th round, which is Doncaster Rovers, 2nd in League 2, taking on Crystal Palace, who are 12 in the Premier League. 57 plays separate these two teams. And I think the FA here haven't handed Crystal Palace made a great favour, because the next league game for Palace is on Friday the 15th, and this game at Doncaster is played on Monday the 10th. So I would expect Glasner to rotate the squad. In the previous round, Palace played Stockport, also from League 2. The Eagles won 1-0, and Glasner made 6 changes, including a start for Eddie Nketiah, the 30 million striker they signed in the summer. He has scored twice in the EFL Cup this season. I think it could be a good bet for him to contribute something, to contribute a goal or an assist in a game that I would expect fairly high scoring. So I'm going to go for Eddie Nketiah to score or assist, and goals range 1 to 4, considering there are no extra time. There are extra times, there is no replay. So I think the Premier League side will want to see it out as quickly as possible, and that boosts the odds quite a lot, I'll say, to 30.
Yeah, big mismatch. I think it's the 2nd biggest Asian handicap in the FA Cup this weekend. Sorry, the 3rd biggest, alongside Plymouth Liverpool. Yeah, yep. 3rd biggest, Plymouth Liverpool and Leyton Orient Man City as well, but biggest gap between the sides in the league standings, as you said. Yeah, interesting one. I think Palace are on really good form at the moment, aren't they? They've won 3 consecutive away games in the Premier League by 2-0, 3 consecutive clean sheets away from members not to be sniffed at in the Premier League. For this one, Daniele, looking back at previous FA Cup round, Palace against Stockport, rotated team again. I remember eyeing up Eddie Nketiah to score. I think I did back it because he is such a goal threat. Nketiah is a really good finisher. He didn't have the best of matches in that one. I think he only had 2 shots in the entire game. Stayed on for 90 minutes and couldn't really get into it. Palace kind of struggled their way through it and just got through it 1-0. Are you concerned we could see something similar here, especially game being played on Monday night? It's a big gap between fixtures. Nketiah hasn't played too many minutes for Palace either, probably not as many as he would have expected since making that summer move. So is that a concern for you here? Maybe a bit of rustiness, and see something similar to what we did in the previous round?
By the law of averages, he should score. If he didn't do well in the previous game, maybe he could do well in this one. Look, I'm being cautious. That's why I took the assist route there. I think it's always difficult to bet on somebody to score. They might not play the full 90 minutes, but this game matters more for Palace. After all, it's a 4th round game, a chance to get into the last 8. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine them to be more fired up for this one. And they are in an upward curve anyway. Palace, after a difficult start, I think only one win in the first 11, and they slowly getting back to the same points average they had with Glasgow at the end of the season. So I think a slip up here in South Yorkshire is very, very unlikely. Yeah, as you said, Nketiah, he's a goal scorer. He's having a difficult spell, but yeah, I would say, yeah, it could be a good bet if he starts. I mean, you check the lineups an hour before the game. You can still bet 5 minutes before the game starts. But if he starts, I think, yeah, it could be a good shot.
Yeah, they're doing better away from home as well than they are at home, which is quite rare for a Crystal Palace side. I think it's 1 defeat and 10 away from home in all competitions for Palace, which is really, really impressive. Daniele's first bet of the show is Eddie Nketiah to score or assist, and the goals range for the match between 1 and 4 when Doncaster take on Crystal Palace. That's at 2.30. One full unit on that, Daniele?
Yeah, of course, one full unit.
Full unit on that. Sam, over to you. That's it for the aforementioned City game.
Yes, Leyton Orient versus Manchester City. I'm going with James McAtee to score at 2.40. So not often I'll put a goal scorer up, but I do like this one. This match comes just a few days before Manchester City versus Real Madrid in the Champions League. So obviously a huge game at the Etihad, and Pep will want to rest some of his key players, the likes of Haaland, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Gvardiol. None of them started in that 8-0 win over Salford in the third round of the FA Cup. And although it's a step up in class here, going from League 2 Salford to now away from home at League 1 Leyton Orient, I would guess it's a similar story. Rotate the 11, still field 11 players that absolutely have enough to dispatch League 1 opposition. It just makes sense. And James McAtee, for me, should start the game, and he probably should play 90 minutes as well. He played all 90 minutes versus Salford, scored a hat-trick in that 8-0 win. He came off the bench against Ipswich and scored his first ever Premier League goal as well a few games ago in a 27-minute cameo there. So very much on the periphery of this City squad. If he features here, then it's, for him anyway, it's a rinse and repeat job as far as he's concerned. Get in the side, take your opportunities, and hope he can squeeze past a long list of midfield options in front of him who you probably have to say have been largely underperforming recently in terms of the way the City side has been and the results that have followed. And he will be, if we're looking at how this game might shape up, he's going to be one of the Manchester City shirts camped inside a Leyton Orient half for large spells. And what got this over the line as a bet for me, Dan, was obviously that recent hat-trick. That was nice, but also the fact that he probably will play 90 minutes. And when Salford began to tire and the game got a little stretched in the second half, it was James McAtee that was the one making runs into the box and keeping up with the wingers who are bombing down either flank. So that might be an option in play as well if we get to the second half and the game is taking that shape and McAtee's still on the pitch. Maybe him to score in the second half. And looking at some of the other Bet365 markets, they got Man City down for 23 plus shots at 1.80. So if we're assuming he plays the full match and there's going to be, 23 to 30 opportunities for City, I like the thought of McAtee being involved with at least a couple of them and going close on occasion. So at 2.40, it was one of a few to score anytime prices in that Man City team that I really like the look of.
Yeah, it does look good, and they certainly will look to rotate for this match, won't they, Sam? Just looking at some of City's upcoming fixtures, they play Leyton Orient this weekend, and then after that, Real Madrid in the Champions League, then Newcastle United, then Real Madrid again, then Liverpool, then Tottenham, all before the end of the month. So McAtee may, with all due respect, I think he's a very good player, an outstanding young prospect, but I don't think if he is going to be getting minutes this month, it's probably going to be in this match, and they're going to want to keep the powder dry for some of those first choice, first team attackers for those matches to come, aren't they?
They are, and the fixtures you've just listed off, I think City are going to struggle in all of those games. Like in transition and running back towards their own goal, which all of those teams, that's really how they all like to play and approach games. City are going to struggle. So yeah, if they can rest and rotate in this game, they should do, and I think Pep will do. And just on McAtee in general, I think he's brilliant. Like, plays in midfield with a license to get up and join attacks, as most Manchester City players do. Really versatile, very comfortable on the ball, as most Man City youngsters are. And he's equally as happy as like receiving the ball in areas in his own half, just as he is under pressure in the opposition's box. I think he's a great player. 22 years old, everything suggests that he will be a star, but I'm just not sure if it's going to be at Manchester City like we've seen with Cole Palmer's and others. And I mentioned some of the other anytime goal scorer prices. There are a couple there that really caught my eye. This was a toss-up really between James McAtee and Doku. You can get Doku at 3.20 to score anytime. He scored 2 goals and got 2 assists in the previous round. You can also get him at 1.72 to either score or assist, which I really like the look of, but I think he's one of them that may be removed after an hour, after 70 minutes, because I think Pep will like the thought of having a somewhat fresh Doku to run at Real Madrid in the last stage of the game. I don't think he'll start versus Madrid, but he's a handy option off the bench, so that was why I've opted with McAtee. But yeah, a few decent prices there. Jack Grealish as well, 3.50. Phil Foden, it's probably he'll probably come off as well, but he's at 2.25. There's a few there that I would definitely recommend.
Yeah, Grealish 1.72 to score or assist. And Scott Thornton isn't here, but if he was, I know he'd be saying it's time to back under on throws with Man City in the FA Cup. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for that when the lines come up later in the week. Sam's second bet of the show is James McAtee to score for City versus Leyton Orient. That's 2.40 with half a unit on that, Sam?
Yeah, I'll go half unit. Yeah.
Good stuff. And Mark, over to you for your second pick.
Yeah, heading to Liga on Friday night for Nantes v Brest. Nantes 14th, Brest up in 8th, but Nantes sort of one eye over their shoulders, only 3 points clear of the relegation zone, but they're in decent form at the minute. They're unbeaten in 5 and pretty impressive because those games include Monaco, Lille and Lyon. And Brest, 8 of their last 10 in Liga have seen over 2.5 goals, so that's the angle I'm looking at, but I'm going to back over 2.25 at 1.98. So, already looks like I'm stealing a quarter of a goal. Look at Brest matches in Liga this season, 67 goals in 20 games. That's an average of 3.35 per game. If you use that as your input, that'd give you 1.39 on over 2.25. Yeah, we're looking at a price of almost evens. Across all comps, 14 of Brest's last 20 have seen over 2.5. In Liga, 70% of their away matches have seen 3 or more goals. Spoke about it before, the only way the bet completely loses if there's 0 or 1 goals. 90% of Brest matches have seen at least 2, same percentage away from home. For Nantes, 90% of their matches have also seen 2 or more goals, 89% at home. And Nantes have been quite sort of basketball-y, if you like. 75% of their games this season have seen both teams score. And these two have played each other a couple of times recently. The reverse fixture in December saw 5 goals. Brest won 4-1. And then they played each other in the Cup a few weeks ago. Brest won that one 2-1. Liga, average this season, 2.93 goals per game, which gives us a blanket price of 1.59 on over 2.25. Yet again, we're getting much closer to evens. Brest are massively outperforming their expected goals against. They should have conceded an extra 7 goals, so there could be even more goals in their games. And Nantes are the second biggest underperformers in terms of expected points in Liga this season, so they could be due some more positive results and thus goals. And I mentioned before about being risk averse in betting. It means this bet has only lost in 10% of both teams' combined games this season. And Dan, you're going to ask me why the price is the price, and I'm going to tell you I don't know.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, because every single piece of evidence that I've looked for to try and argue against it has come up with nothing, because Brest have the third highest goal average in Liga, 3.35. Betsy projections put it at 2.7. I got nothing to say.
2.7 would give us basically 50-50 over under 2.5. Yeah, we're kind of saying we've got a 50% chance on over 2.25. So again, I feel like we're massively stealing like at least quarter of a goal.
Yeah, I have actually taken a bet in this game personally, and I don't know if it has anything to do with the goal lines. I think if anything, it might help the cause, but this is Brest's 8th game in 23 days. So they've played a fixture every 2.87 days on average, which is just bonkers. So obviously they've had to deal with the 2 Champions League matches recently and also 2 Coupe de France matches in that time. And they also played Troyes last night. They won 2-1. didn't watch the game, but it looked like it was at 1-1 until the final stages when they got a few of their big guns on and they ended up scoring in injury time. So they've not exactly had the week to prepare, and there will be some tired legs in that game. So I bet Nantes 0.0 Asian handicap. But if anything, in terms of a goals bet, I would imagine this helps the cause. You would back Brest to score against Nantes, I reckon. But if they are a bit leggy at the back, I think Nantes can take advantage, and there probably should be goals in this game. So
I mean, both teams to score is 1.9. Couldn't really put anyone off that either. And it's probably a conversation for another day. But I'd always be interested to hear what people prefer to back, whether they prefer to back overs or whether they prefer to back both teams to score. But I think Nottingham Forest versus Brighton just shows you why you should always back overs, even though you might need to get an extra goal, just because in case one team doesn't turn up or they get a red card. So yeah, fully in agreement with what you said as well, Sam. Although, having said that, there is like a winter break in France as well. But I do take on board like 8 games in 23 days is a lot of work. Yeah,
it's a lot. And especially Brest as well. This isn't a Champions League squad that is blessed with riches and blessed with a massive squad, is it? So that's going to be a test for any team, especially one that's stretched over 3-4 competitions.
And the small matter of a 2-legged tie against PSG to come, start with the first leg next week for Brest. It's not going to stop for them. So maybe one to keep an eye on in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, love the bet, Mark. Honestly, really, really good. Mark's second pick is over 2.25 goals in Nantes versus Brest. That's a 1.89. You got a full unit down. Do you want to do 2?
No, I think I take Sam's point on board. That I think you could easily perhaps see Brest run out of gas and Nantes desperate for the points. Maybe they shut up shop at 1-0 or maybe shut up shop at 2-0. So happy with the 1 point. Thanks.
That's the only worry with this is that Nantes get a goal early, and it's just both teams are happy to shake hands and call it a day. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope we get a few goals at both ends. Daniele, on to your second bet, looking at Roma.
Roma against Venezia, traveling to Venezia after the midweek cup game against AC Milan. Roma, they've done a bit of a rebuild in the January transfer market, basically admitting the mistakes because 4 of the signings in the summer, they've already gone out of the window on loan, namely Enzo Leffe, who's now the best player in the championship for Sunderland, but wasn't good enough for Roma, and Mario Hermoso to Bayer Leverkusen. In comes Rensch, decent right back, a couple of the signings from the Dutch league, but Roma have picked up after Ranieri, and as we expected, the points per game increased. Against Napoli, they didn't risk it much. They marginally won the XG battle, 0.38 against 0.36. It wasn't a great game in terms of emotions, but they traveled to a Venezia side who have basically dismantled the squad in January, and most of all, they have let go 2 of the best players. Defender Giorgio Altare, very, very experienced, but captain and leading goal scorer last season, Poyampalo, who went to Palermo in Serie B. So look out for Poyampalo to push the Rosanero up to promotion. I think he can do it. But for Venezia, now we're second from bottom. The hope is that Daniel Fila from Slavia Prague, he looks like a gamble at 2.5 million, and Mirko Maric, who scored the total of 4 goals in the last 2 seasons, only 1 in Serie A with Monza, can revitalize them. To me, it seems like they are almost convinced they're going to go down. And in fact, Betsy predicts them to finish the second from bottom, only 0.6 points ahead of Monza, who should finish 20th. Also, Monza have sold a few players. And I think there is value on betting on Venezia to finish bottom at 225, to be fair, considering how close they're projected to finish. But for this one, Roma, I know they only won 1 game away from home this season. They only kept a couple of clean sheets in all competitions. I fancy them to win at the 0.75 Asian handicap for the Giallorossi with a good price, 199, so basically even odds. If they win by only 1 goal, you only win half a stake. So I think.
Yeah, I was glad you brought up Roma's away form there because it's been pretty dire, hasn't it, for some time. I think they beat Udinese. When was it? Last week, a week before. It's their first away win in Serie A since April last year, which is staggering. So are you expecting them to turn a bit of a corner then, and they've got the monkey off their back, so to speak, maybe start kicking on away from home?
No, I think they will. They were disjointed under Juric, and it took them a little bit of time to adapt. But if you look at the last away performances, even when they lost against Napoli, they didn't really go under that much. So I would expect them to come out strong. Look, still projected to finish ninth, which will be a sensible decrease compared to last season. They finished sixth, but mindful of Roma in the cup competitions, starting with Coppa Italia tonight at Milano, but also the Europa League, where they face Porto, and potentially there could be a derby with Lazio in the knockout ties. I think that's really what they're gonna focus on. But in terms of creative players, very few teams in Serie A have got the likes of Sule, Dybala, Baldanzi, Shomudorov, Pellegrini, Salemakers. So, it is a team that also from the bench can make a lot of changes to affect them in second half. And I think that's what we're going to see them over the line against Venezia the weekend.
Yeah, best projections for this game give Venezia 0.96 projected goals, Roma 1.85, so a difference of 0.89. So definitely siding with Daniele's bet, which is Roma minus 0.75 in the Asian handicap market versus Venezia. That's a 1.99 with one full unit on it. Let's get on with the pod treble. Another unfortunate loss last week. It's just the card bet didn't quite come in. Let's kick it off, Sam. Give us your leg for the pod treble.
I'm going for Wolves to win at 1.70 versus Blackburn in the FA Cup. So Wolves last year kicked off at 2.10 in the Cup away at the Hawthorns against West Brom. I was hoping for something similar in terms of price, given Wolves' struggles in the Premier League, but instead this opened at 1.80 and now it's at 1.70 a few days out from kickoff. And this is quite simple for me. Both on performing too well in their respective leagues. Blackburn's 6-game winning run from mid-November to mid-December feels like an age ago now. And what they served up last night away to QPR Tuesday night confirmed as much. They were second to every ball, not quite at the races, and outclassed overall by QPR. And although Wolves are languishing scarily close to the relegation spots in the Premier League, the quality they possess, I think it will be evident here. Vitor Pereira has spoken glowingly about the FA Cup, which is good news for a pro Wolves pick. Very strong lineup in the third round away against Bristol City, where they won 2-1. And we know the divide between the Premier League and Championship is widening. Teams are winning promotion from the Championship and going straight back down at the first time of asking. The rich are getting richer, and it's an increasingly tough ask for these Championship clubs. And I think we're going to see that again on the pitch. This FA Cup tie on Sunday afternoon comes ahead of a hugely important match versus West Brom for Blackburn 3 days later on Wednesday night. And that is a fight for the final playoff spot. So I just wonder how much a Rovers side not quite at it at the minute will give to remain in this competition. Obviously they would like to, but if the choice was to get FA Cup 5th round or potentially still a march on their playoff rivals in West Brom to start changing your fortunes in the league, I think I know what they'd pick. So Wolves to get the win at 1.7.
Yeah. Over to you, Mark.
Norwich to beat Derby in the Championship at 1.75. Derby lost the last 7 now. Failed to score in 5 of those. A bit further back, they lost 11 of their last 14. And actually, if you look back over the last 16 matches in the Championship, they are the worst team in the division. Yes, worse than Plymouth. They lost 10 of 15 away games this season. Norwich actually in a nice bit of form at the moment. They've won 5 of the last 8, despite the fact, obviously, they've been without Borja Sainz for a few of those with his suspension. He'll be suspended here, which I guess is probably the only negative. But Norwich average the 3rd most possession in the league, so they're going to dominate the ball. Derby average the 3rd least. Norwich create the 3rd most big chances in the league this season. They've created 75. To put that number into context, Leeds, who are the best team in the league, have created 92. So it just shows how good Norwich are going forward. Leeds were 1.38 at home to Derby in December. I'm not saying Norwich should be in that quota, but I think it puts into perspective this 1.75. Derby are 3rd bottom in terms of big chances created. You look at expected goals, obviously a similar sort of metric. Norwich 4th for expected goals created. Derby 4th bottom. You got Derby's manager, Paul Warne, he's been relegated every time he's managed in the Championship, and that's pretty impressive considering he's done it 3 times. They're currently 22nd. They're in the drop zone. I think this rut that they're in, they're not going to be able to get out of it ultimately. Just lost their sort of probably best centre-back, Cashin, to Brighton last week for 9 million. He ranks really high for tackles and clearances in the Championship. He actually tops the whole Championship for interceptions. And given Norwich are going to dominate the ball, I think that could be quite key. Norwich attempt the 3rd most through balls per game. And yeah, I just think if you look at Derby's squad, I think it's a bit of a League One squad, to be honest. You've got the likes of Curtis Nelson, Adams, Mendes Lang. They were all playing for them last season. They've all made 20 or more appearances. And just people they've got up front just aren't good enough. No offence. They've got Jerry Yates, Caden Jackson. Jerry Yates only got 29 goals in 179 Championship games. Jackson only 9 in 73. So, yeah, I think it's just Championship versus League One ultimately. Norwich won the reverse fixture 3-2. And, yeah, that was obviously away from home. So, at home, expect them to dominate even more, essentially. And, yeah, I think 1.75 maybe could be argued should be perhaps closer to, I don't know, 1.6 perhaps, something like that. That's the price that Sunderland were to beat Derby anyway.
Yeah, 7 defeats and 1 FA Cup exit to Leyton Orient for Derby in their last 8 games. Not looking good for them. Daniele, over to you.
We go to Roma, Lazio, Roma, the Olimpico, Lazio, Monza. Lazio pretty much unchanged in the transfer windows, but to pick up a good victory at Cagliari last Monday, whereas Monza, again, a team that has completely dismantled, a club that's completely dismantled the team, and it looks like bound to Serie B. They sold Juric, Bondo, Daniel Maldini, Pablo Mari, and they came a few young players, Lekovic, Palacio, Ganovula, Urbanski, Castrovilli, who's been out in and out of the sides with a lot of injuries. So it looks like a bit of a gamble, yes. And again, they projected to finish bottom. And going against Betsy, our in-house tool, a little bit, who suggests to back Monza with a plus 1.25 Asian handicap. And instead, I'm going to back Lazio with a -1 Asian handicap, which means I think Lazio are going to win, probably with more than 1 goal difference. I think at the moment the difference between these two sides is too big. Lazio have been consistent at home and they've dispatched with his lower table side. So yeah, -1 for me for Lazio to win against Monza.
It's a brave man to oppose Betsy, but I like this one, Daniele. Looks good. Let's get on. Let's recap our singles, please. Starting with you, Sam.
I've gone for Nottingham Forest away at Exeter to win the first half and win the game at 1.83, and also James McAtee to score for Man City versus Leyton Orient in the FA Cup at 2.40 for half a unit, and I've gone for a unit on Wolves to win away in Blackburn in the FA Cup.
And Mark?
Yeah, Bilbao versus Girona in La Liga over 2.25 goals at 1.89. Then in France on Friday night, Liga, Nantes versus Brest over 2.25 goals at 1.98.
And Daniele?
For me, it's Doncaster Crystal Palace, Eden Nketiah to score or assist and goals range 1-4 at 2.30. Roma Asian handicap -0.75 when they travel to Venezia at 1.99.
And for the pod treble, Sam has put forward Wolves to beat Blackburn at 1.70. Mark's put forward Norwich to beat Derby. Daniele has put forward Lazio -1 in the Asian handicap market versus Monza. That's 1.62. Put all of those bets together, you'll get odds of 4.83, which we will be backing for a quarter of a unit. If you are going to be using any of the bets from today's show, then please gamble responsibly, only betting what you can afford to lose. Thank you as ever to Sam Ingram.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniele Fiscella.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark Slingscombe.
Cheers, Dan.
And thanks from me. We'll be back next week.